Cord. Good morning and Jai Baba, and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in Baba's wonderful world. We're glad to be here today to celebrate the life of Meheru, one of Baba's women Mandali. I'm going to turn it over to Karen Talbot, who has a wonderful bio for us. And then after that, I have a little video and we can share after that. So Karen, if you'd like to start us.
Hey, Baba, everyone. I really appreciate the chance to do this because it brings up so many wonderful memories of time spent with Meheru. She was born on October 2nd, 1927 in India. Her parents were Rustom Kaikhushru Irani and Freiny Jehanjir Irani. Freiny was Mehera's sister, Rustom Adi's brother. Her siblings were Merwan, Falu, Naggu, Beheram, and Jangoo. She passed on April 21st, 2012 at Meherazad. She was the last remaining Mandali member, women's Mandali. She's interred at Upper Meherabad to the right of Mani's tomb shrine. Meheru Rustom Irani was born of royal Meher Baba lineage on October 2nd, 1927. She met Meher Baba while she was still in her mother's womb, and then soon thereafter. Meheru was Mehera's niece. Meheru's mother, Freiny Jehanjir Irani, as I said earlier, was Mehera's sister. Her father, Rustom Kaikhushru Irani, was Adi K. Irani's brother and the eldest son of Baba's spiritual mother, Gulmai. Her grandfather, Kaikhushru, owned Meherabad. Meheru's parents were engaged by Baba's instruction at Manzil Imam. Their wedding was held in 1923, and Baba, of course, attended the wedding. Her birth name was Mehera. Her mother, Freiny, named her for her sister, Mehera. But when she joined the women's ashram as a teenager in 1942, and then Baba gave her the name Meheru to distinguish her from Mehera, his Mehera. Her family lived in the same compound as his women's ashram, which was located at the time in Nasik, near the Godavari River in the early 1930s. Baba would often spend the night at Meheru's house, and as a small child, she was constantly in and around him and his women disciples. The family stayed there a few years and Baba visited often. Baba ate at Meheru's home, curry and rice, dal and rice, khichdi and vegetables. As soon as Meher Baba arrived, the children rushed to embrace him and wanted to be first. They could bow down to his feet. Baba played with him. One time, Meheru was hit on the nose and lost blood. Baba always had sympathy, love, and concern for her. One time she had a quarrel with her brother. She was sulking and would not eat. Baba fed her every morsel. Baba would have a 1-hour meditation. And it was very difficult for her mother because she had to keep her children quiet for the entire hour. So she would give them sugar cane and they would all be making flowers as well. For school holidays, they would stay at Kushru quarters in Ahmednagar, now the trust compound. Sarosh stayed with his family. Vilu's relatives came, so many children. They would visit Pimplegown Lake for swimming and also go to Happy Valley. At Nasik, the Western women were also there. Norina, Nani, Jean Adriel, Rano, Kitty, Ruano, Bogoslav, and they had a lovely association of the Western. One year, they stayed at Meherabad. Baba's orders were not to cross the railway lines, so they never saw Upper Meherabad at that time. And that's when they saw Mehera for the first time. They knew Mani because she would visit in Nasik. And it was Meheru's first time seeing Muhammad the mosque. To a child, to her, he was strange and intriguing. She told him to wipe his nose. Gustaji said not to tell him that. In 1937, Baba's birthday was celebrated in Nasik. Grain bundles were made to be distributed to the poor. There was a trained monkey who embraced Baba. And these are her remembrances. In 1938, Baba's birthday was celebrated again on a grand, but this time on a very grand scale. Meheru's mother was called 1 week before to help with the arrangements. Meheru was determined to join. She chased the car as her mother left. Then Baba said, "Why didn't you bring her and Katie?" Meheru had a very pretty dress sewn especially for Baba's birthday. She proudly showed her dress to Baba. After 1938, she and her sister were called from boarding school to spend all their holidays with Baba wherever he was. So in essence, as children, preteens, she joined the Blue Bus tours whenever she was on holiday from her school. And she recollects sitting on stools that were very hot. Rana was in charge of packing. They never, and she would make sure that they didn't take much. They never got to look out the windows because the older people in the Blue Bus already had their seats. So they were again on these little stools. Sometimes she would be in the car with Baba and Mehera. In 1942, Meheru joined the women Mandalus ashram as a young teenager. She did a lot of traveling with Baba. And in 1942, she went in the water. She was swimming near the shore, wherever they were, and an undercurrent caught her and started pulling her under. She struggled and swam as hard as she could, but kept being pulled back. Finally, she started yelling help to one of the women who was washing clothes on a rock on the beach. This woman, however, looked at Meheru and thought she was just being dramatic and ignored her. Meheru, who was really getting ready to drown, yelled all the more as she was being pulled down. Meanwhile, Baba was talking to several people with his back against a rock facing away from the river. They were all sitting on the soft sand that covered the banks, straining to hear Mani reading Baba speaking from the alphabet board over the roar of the river. Merwan Jeswala was there. What he does remember is Baba suddenly leaping up and running to the river and reaching in and grabbing Meheru's arm and hoisting her out of the water. Meheru doesn't remember the details. She said she was going round and round in the whirlpool, and suddenly, when all appeared to be lost, someone grabbed her hand, lifted her to safety. She didn't remember that it was Baba. So when we are being pulled down into the whirlpool of our lives and all seems lost, if we call out to him, we will find the beloved reaching down to lift us to safe ground. So that was quite an experience for her. She remained in the ashram through the 40s. In 1949, she was one of the 4 chosen women to accompany Meher Baba on the new life: Mera, Mani, Meheru, and Dr. Goher. In 1952, she traveled to the West, to Europe and the USA with Meher Baba, Mera, Mani, and again, Dr. Goher. When they arrived at the Meher Center, they stayed in the guest house. And then after their time was complete at the Meher Center, they went to drive across the country to California. However, we all remember in 1952, May 24, the car accident at Prague, Oklahoma. When that occurred and she was in the car Baba was in, she was the one who placed Baba's head gently on her lap as he lay in the mud on the side of the road after the car accident, as they waited for help. Through the years, she served Baba and Mehera both, helping Mehera with Baba's personal work in the garden and with their many pets, with correspondence, with sewing and household arrangements. After Baba passed away in 1969, she continued to serve Mehera until Mehera's passing in 1989. She also became quite involved in the archives at Meherazad and was involved in the work that was taken there to build an archive, which still is there at Meherazad. It's not particularly open to visitors, but it's there. And she was the one responsible for the archives being put there. In 1993, Meheru visited the West. She was the guest speaker at the LA Sahavas. I was very fortunate. Alan and I and the children went after not going for many years. And then after the LA Sahavas, she came up to our San Francisco Bay Area, and we had an absolutely wonderful, wonderful days. She stayed with Ed and Ursula Van Buskirk and Eric, and we went on a trip to Muir Woods looking for the tree that Baba sat under. And then we went to the Holiday Lodge where Baba and the Mandawi stayed when they came to California. And it's since been torn down. So it was really special. While she wasn't there on that trip, she knew the whole story and showed us the room. We found the room that Baba stayed in. So that was very special. I'd like to close by reading what Don Stevens said about Meheru. He said this on December 28th, 2001. Meheru, a niece of Mehera, has been with Baba now for decades, always accompanying her, and whenever Mehera went on trips with Baba. While she had been in the background during the lifetime of Mehera, and that's very true, I remember she was like the princess in waiting. In recent times, she too has shown the strong intelligence and character that was so evident in Mehera. She has been made the head of the Trust Archives activity and has done a superb job of organizing that complex and very sensitive work. And here's what Sheriar Books wrote about her. As good at flower arranging as she is with hammer and nails, tender-hearted, quick-witted, and adventurous, Meheru is a surprise and delight for visitors to the women's side of Meherazad. And her moving stories of Baba's love for Mehera and Mehera's love for Baba are unforgettable, providing a rare glimpse into the secluded world of his closest women disciples. As the last remaining woman Mandali member, she cared for Meherazad and shared her reminiscences of life with Meher Baba, Mehera, and the women Mandali on the veranda with each of us. Meheru passed away at the age of 84 on April 21st, 2012. And yes, she was interred next to Mani's tomb shrine to the right of Baba's Samadhi. Two books that she was involved with, one was hers, the other was a book published, Tales from the New Life. And the contributing authors who narrated the book were Erich, Mehera, Mani, and Meheru. And she wrote nursery rhymes in Mehera's time. No, nursery rhymes in Meher's time. So, written by Meheru Irani. It was illustrated by Susan White and published by Sheriar Press. And there are DVDs and videos out there from the Oral History Project. And there's a DVD from Wendell Brusman's witness series, In His Presence, Meheru Irani. So fortunate we were to have that time with Meheru and to really hear the wonderful stories So I'm going to turn it over to Ruthie to see the next segment. Jai Baba, everyone.
Jai Baba. Karen, so beautiful. You always just take us right there through the years. I'm so grateful to you. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. Jai Baba.
Beautiful. Just beautiful. Okay. I have a video that I'd like to show. Oops. Let's start here.
Hey, Ruthie.
Yes.
There was a part that we couldn't hear when Karen was speaking. It was the part that came before the date 1980. I think it was either 83 or 93 when she had to look at some papers, and we couldn't hear that part. It was probably a few paragraphs. So anyway.
No, it wasn't a few paragraphs. She was simply the guest speaker in 1993 at the LA Sahavas, and then she came up to our area. And we got to go to Muir Woods and Holiday Lodge and have other events with her. And that was basically
okay.
it.
Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Jai
Thank you.
Baba. All right. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody so we're quiet through the video. So here we go. Jai Baba.
I waited for you to come. I a languishing stream, without a babble, without a dream, till I felt life within me surge and fill me with an urge to know my soul, to reach the goal, and to give my all to the ocean whole. You changed my world the day you came into my life. Oh, keep me in the circle, in the close circle. Keep me in the circle of your love. I had wandered in a desolate land where hope would not grow, till the day you took my hand and you let me know of a love so tender, a love so true. Oh, Meherabad, that love is you. You changed my world the day you came into my life. Oh, keep me in the circle, in the close circle. Keep me in the circle of your love. When I entered your realm, what peace I found. I knelt down and kissed the ground, where still are fresh the imprints of your feet. And I quenched my thirst with such water sweet, graced by your smile. Meher, how beautiful is this garden, where the earth and the air with your fragrance is laden. You changed my world the day you came into my life. Oh, keep me in the circle, in the close circle. Keep me in the circle of your love. You changed my world the day you came into my life. Oh, keep me in the circle, in the close circle. Keep me in the circle of your love.
Jai Baba. How fortunate we are. I'm so glad we're all here together. I guess what I want to say is there are two pictures in that video of me sitting in the Pilgrim Center garden with Meheru, and I didn't put the third one in. I don't know why, but it was one of the most poignant, tender moments of my 5 weeks in India. I had no time at all with Meheru. I saw everyone else. I asked for photos with all the Mandali. Someone had said, take a camera. Make sure you go up and ask each Mandali, can I have my picture with you? And then have someone take photos. There was no opportunity with Meheru until the day we were leaving. And there was something so rich and pure and silent in the communication that we had sitting there on the bench. And the minute I felt it, I was just completely dissolving and I started to weep. So the other photo is of me with my face, with me weeping as I'm looking at her. And I don't know that she even said anything to me. And then I kind of found myself moving out of that state, but I was in a state with her that I had not experienced anywhere else while I was in India, in that state of just communion with Baba through her. So anyway, I'm just so grateful. There was so much that was communicated to me in that time, unspoken communication that was just, I'm doing my best to describe, but you can tell it was indescribable. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my memory with Meheru. And thank you. And is there anybody else that has anything they'd like to bring? Mihal, Jai Baba.
Okay, some people are shy to start. I'm not shy to start if I have something to say. And I was thinking of Meru today. We have already had a few rounds of remembering her days or her going aways. First of all, Karen, your bio this time, I don't remember some of the stories that you told this time. Maybe you have added some of them, but it sounded so, yeah, you have. Yeah, there was the story of the river where she was going into the, and some of her early days. It's always so beautiful to hear your bios. I really would love to read a book that you'd put them all together because they come so much from the heart. And when you said it today, it was also a lot of joy in it. Your face was shining and you was happy and loving while saying that. And Ruthie, seeing the picture of you with Meryl was so sweet. And you leaning onto her. Did you say it was in the PC? Yeah. So she actually came to you. I mean, you went to all the Mandali to get the fit photos in Meherazad, but she made sure to come to you and to take this photo. So that's very, very special, very, very precious. So I was remembering Meru today and I was wondering, am I going to be here again? Because, and then I said, yes, these are the Mandali, Baba's Mandali, and just coming to honor them by being in such a program seemed to be very important to me. They are so special. They are so very, very special. And Meryl always seemed very special to me and very human to me because she did not have an easy life. She did not have an easy family to grow up in, but she had Baba all her life. And I was thinking that one of the things that is so very special is that time that she actually Baba moved to Nasik, and when Baba moved to Nasik, he took everyone to Nasik, and he took Rustom, her father and her mother, to Nasik, and Rustom opened a business for all the Mandali there, car business, and he opened a cinema for there. And the ashram of the Western woman was in the compound of their own house. So Meru actually got to be with Baba in that time, this early time that Baba spent a lot of time in Nasik. And when he also started to go to abroad, and the women Mandali at that time, Baba, because he went a lot from Meherabad, then he asked the women Mandali to stay with Rustom's family because they had women in India always have to have chaperones. So they were chaperoning Mehera and the women mandali. So actually, from very, very young age, Meru used to see all the mandali in Nasik and also all the women mandali in Nasik and all the Western mandali in Nasik. Actually, she grew up in Baba, completely in Baba, although she went to school out of, I think, to a boarding school, but most of her life was there. So I always feel that her very human side, and also some kind of sadness that always was aligning in her life. And I always felt compassion for her for that. Because of the way she grew up and because the split of her father but Baba picked her up so early and brought her to him, and she was very, very precious there. So the memories that I have with her, except that beautiful vision of a very young age, to grow up in Nasik when everything of Baba was happening there. And with all these very special people that she grew up next to and was influenced by. When I first came to Meherabad the first time and I didn't see Baba's room, someone asked me, "Did you see Baba's room?" I think it was actually Meru that asked me, "Did you see Baba's room?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Okay." Then I said, "Well, can you show me Baba's room?" And she said, "Yes, I'll show you Baba's room." And immediately Devana or Casey said, "No, we'll do that, Meru, we'll do that," because I didn't quite get who's Mandali, who's not Mandali. I didn't know anyone but Baba, and that's about what I knew when I came there. So she took me around in Baba's room. And another memory that I have, which is like, this is the beginning of my being there and the end of my being there, close to the end of my being there, with Meru anyway. All the women Mandali have left, have gone to Baba, and Meru was there. And she didn't like she didn't like to preside on the terrace. She didn't like to do that. And she had to do that. It was her obligation to do that, but she didn't like it too much. She didn't want to be in the center of everything. So she didn't sit where all of them sat, right next to Mehera on the wall or something. She used to sit right next to the door in a small side corner of the terrace. And one day I came there and I was sitting on a chair right opposite her, and she was sitting on the side, and some other people were there. And suddenly I felt that I wanted to go into Mehera's room and Mani's room. So I went into Mani's room and I left my bag on the chair because I knew that I was coming back. But someone just came in, took my bag, put it on the side, and sat in the chair. And when I came out, I found someone else on the chair. So I was surprised like that. And this girl was smiling at me, and she was doing that purposely. And Meru was watching this whole thing. And I said, well, whatever place I have, the best place to be is right next to Baba's feet. That's where I want to be. So Meru laughed, and she gave me a stool right next to her. And so that was very fun. There was one thing also that I remember on the terrace there. And I was sort of singing this song, but maybe later. So I feel that Meru was very, very never wanting to be in the center of things. I always remember her serving Mehera and looking for Mehera and supporting Mehera. And when she had to be in the center of things, she really didn't like it. So, but she was a brave, young, beautiful Baba lover. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. So beautiful, Mihal. You brought things that I think were very deep and important. Her sadness and her braveness and her adventure. She seemed to me to, there's one photo of her walking up the hill, and she looks like a gypsy queen to me. She's got that flavor of, I don't know, adventure and beauty. So thank you for it's like we're filling in the depth of this woman. Of course we can't, but it helps to, it's putting putting the flesh here. It's good to have her here. Jai Baba. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning, Jai Baba, everyone. My apologies for being late. I have a few stories, but one in particular, my first meeting or going to India, and it was Silence Day, and my daughter and I were in all of this, and you feel like a deer under headlights. There's so much going on. You don't know the protocol. Nobody's talking. And then all of a sudden, Deb Johnny came over and grabbed my arm and pointed at my daughter and I, and then to Meheru, that we were to go to her. So I was like, okay. So we went, and they were putting the garland on Mehera's tomb. And I just thought that was so lovely, being new and very confused, and how she was so inclusive, and just being so kind to make us part of that experience. So that was pretty impressive to me. And relaxing. I didn't feel quite so pressured. And when I was out at Meherazad, working and staying sometimes, she was always so kind, always so kind. It was when she was talking to you, she was talking to you. She was so focused, and her love for serving. I didn't get to meet Mehera, but when she talked of Mehera, she lit up. And she was very kind to me, because I just so many things she taught me, how to do things that I would never have learned to do if she had not kind of at times taken me under her wing. And I loved Meheru very much. So thank you, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, when you mentioned that she taught you things, you're talking about kind of like the protocols around India, around Baba's tomb, or?
Yes, those things. One was, never straddle the threshold, to always, step over very quickly. That was one of them. And also I was having some issues with some of the dogs there. And so she had said, just carry the stick, just carry the stick, and you'll be okay. And anyway, one day, I don't know how long I'd been there, maybe a month, I'm not sure. And she just came over and she said, you don't need that anymore. And I trusted her implicitly. It was like, okay, I guess we're good. And then one trip, she talked about the, I forget the name of what this was. It was a hot drink that she would make. I'm sure someone here would know the name of it. It's just so lovely to drink. And sometimes it felt like if you did something that pleased her, she would make sure it was there the next day or later that day. She wasn't huggy kissy, not that kind of person, but when she said thank you or she appreciated something you did for her, you felt it. Yeah. Yeah. So
Beautiful.
I hope that's clear enough.
Very clear. Thanks, Wendy.
Jai Baba.
Jay Baba. Beautiful memories. Yeah. And Judy. Good morning. Jay Baba, Judy.
Jay Baba, it's so wonderful. We're celebrating on her actual birthday. And what you and Karen do, Ruthie, in these memories, remembering the mandali is always so wonderful. But in particular today, it felt like both of you captured so much of Meheru in your presentations. And in particular, I laughed out loud. Karen, on the where you had a vignette of her as a young girl with Mohammed the Must, and that even then she was telling him to wipe his nose. and it brought out, it was like, wow, that quality. And Wendy, you referred to it, the threshold. Meheru was not shy about directing proper action. Like whether you were a brand new pilgrim or a longtime resident, if you had 1 foot over the threshold or whatever, you would hear about it, which and literally every time I go over a threshold ever since. So I've been there for years as a resident, so blessed. But it was a day when Mara's porch was completely packed with people. And I'd been in Baba's house inside, and, I came out, I think Meheru, I don't remember exactly who was talking, but I wanted to sort of be able to hear, but not take up space on an already crowded porch. And I had 1 foot on the side. There wasn't actually a threshold there at the beginning of Baba's door, but there's the whatever covering the floor inside the house has, and then the porch itself. And I had 1 foot on the porch and 1 foot on the inside the house. And she told me right there and then in front of everybody, don't do that. And Baba said never to, stand over a threshold. In life, you need to be on one side of an issue or another, not like halfway in between. And so she gave a whole wonderful lesson in that process, and something I've never forgotten. And now ever since, it's a way I remember Baba every time I go from a room to room in my house. My house actually has thresholds, that one could stand on. I don't. But anyway, it's a way that I remember Baba. And Ruthie, in your beautiful slideshow and the music, for anyone that doesn't know, Keep Me in the Circle is a song that Meheru herself wrote. And the combination, what I saw that I think would be very, very pleasing to Meheru and to Mehera in your video presentation was so often you put in, there would be a picture of Meheru, and then there'd be a picture of Baba. And then, so that Baba was always getting pointed at. And that was a quality that both Mehera and Meheru, who probably learned it from Mehera, focused on, don't focus on us. All the Mandali were like that. Focus on him, always pointing back to him. So he really captured it this morning with Meheru, and she would especially appreciate that. I'm coming on today not having the slightest idea of what I'm going to share, which usually I wait till Baba, I feel Baba nudging me to share something, because I feel like he's been so generous to me with Meheru, that I had so many years and experiences with her. And but I'm not sure what to share, because I think I've shared a lot of this in previous remembrances of her.
Judy,
Yeah.
you know how our memories are. We forget. You can share things and it'll be new to us.
Yeah.
In Baba,
Ditto.
they're always new, so no worries, okay?
Thanks. Yes, I have the same issue. I'm kind of like an Alzheimer's patient of like, which reminds, I used to work for the Alzheimer's Association, and we took liberties of having jokes because we loved Alzheimer's patients so much. But guess what Alzheimer's patients do on Easter? They hide their own eggs. And I'm a little bit that way of like, it's, at any rate, thanks for the permission, even if I've said it before. Okay, so I will, I'll share that when I first met Meheru, and for actually quite a while, I, of course, was a pilgrim first at Meherabad, and then in 91, I had the good fortune to become a part-time resident for the next 16 years. And I was intimidated by Meheru. She was scary to me because she corrected people, and she was very direct. And to my great fortune, that changed when she came to the West. And when she came to the West, well, before she came to the West, it was 1991, and I was there as I'd written to Mani and asked permission to come, that I wanted to try to be of service to Baba. Try is the operative word. And so this was the beginning of me becoming a resident. But the president of the LA group, who I'd never met before, I didn't know him at all, but he came over to me and he said, "You're from Seattle, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you have the authority on the behalf of the Seattle group to invite Meheru to come to the West, or to come to Seattle?" And I thought for 20 seconds, about our group, and would anybody, we're very loose, we were very active group, but it's like, no, nobody's going to object whatsoever. They're all going to cheer. And I said, yeah. And he said, good, because we want to invite her to come to the LA Sahavas, but we feel she'd be much more open to the invitation if another group invited her. So we, got, asked for some private time with Meheru and invited her to come basically to the West Coast, to LA and Seattle. And the long and the short of that was, after we had extended the invitation to come to LA and Seattle, Meheru decided that if she was going to come to the West, she was going to come everywhere. And so she did a whole tour of the US, of Europe, including Istanbul, and then down to Australia. And I don't want to take too much time, but we're a small group. I'll do some of the details. So at any rate, our group, Meheru loves nature, and she made it very clear she wanted to see America and nature, be outside. So we decided, living up in the Northwest, we actually reserved a whole camping area at Camino Island State Park, and we were all going to camp out in tents for our Sahavas together. And the folks from Vancouver would come down, and the folks from Oregon would come up, and so forth. And it happened that she was coming on what is statistically the driest week of the year in Seattle. She arrived on July 15th in a monsoon rain. It was absolutely pouring as it had never poured before. And it was like about a 2-hour drive from the airport up to the island. One of our members, many of you know Paula Roper, Paula loved Meheru. She wasn't intimidated by her. And so my thought was, okay, we'll have her stay there. I was going to camp out in Paula's backyard and do all the cooking. And so I hadn't cleaned my house whatsoever. I'd gotten everything together for camping and all of this. And as it turned out, we arrived up there. I was schlepping the luggage. Paula was driving Meheru up those 2 hours to the, Anyway, when I got in the house, Meheru took me to a back bedroom and said, Judy, can I come stay at your house? And it's like, I don't know what Baba had up his sleeve, but she came and stayed at my house for an entire week. I have a tiny little house, the tiniest of any of our members. And Baba knew that secretly I wanted to invite her to my house to have tea once, but I never asked for it because everybody else wanted, to have her over and so forth. And so at any rate, she came, and this is what I don't know. It is the truth, but I feel shy to say it. After Meheru returned to India, and I was living over there and seeing her often, many times she told me of all the places I stayed on my world tour. It was your house that I felt most comfortable in. And I think that's because it was just us girls. Christy Pearson was accompanying her on the US part of the tour. And so Christy stayed in the room I'm in right now, and I gave Meheru my bedroom, and I slept down in the basement. And Meheru she wanted to make vegetable soup. So we went to my local produce store and bought all these vegetables, and she never saw the sun. She never saw Mount Rainier, which is the highest point in the US that you can see, all over Seattle. It was overcast and rainy all week. And somehow we would meet at other people's houses. That, any of the plans we had to be totally redone. But it was long before she left. I didn't feel intimidated at all. And it was somehow a bond that lasted a lifetime. It's lasted for my whole lifetime. And I think it was about 2015. I think it was Kristen Crawford, who had come back from India. Kristen Crawford was Meheru's right hand. She's working on her biography. One of these years we'll be able to read that. But she relayed a message that Meheru wants to see you again. I was no longer a resident, and I'd been in the West, and I was deep in finishing and trying to tie together all of Khorshed's biography, which I had been worked on for 7 years. And and my health was beginning to decline. And I didn't get there before she passed away. She passed away in 2016. And in April of 2016, and Baba called me there at the end of November, the month of December of 2016, but Meheru had passed. And I always held in my heart of she asked me to come before she was passing. And I didn't make it. And later I mentioned that to Kristen Crawford, who was so close and did so much with and for Meheru over the years. And her immediate response was, "Oh, Judy, that just means you're going to see your next life." I don't know, it is comforting, but if I have one regret, it's that I didn't manage to make it there earlier, just in that she had specifically asked. But yes, Meheru was very, very dear to me. And one of the things we did in Seattle while she was here, she wanted to play Gilly Danda, which is a game, an Indian game. And she taught us how to make they're wooden, and you had to be carved, the things you hit, like a ball, but it's not a ball, it's like 2 cones put together in the middle at any rate. And of course, she was the best athlete, better than any of the guys or any of us gals. And she was, I don't know, I'd have to do the math, but she was in her maybe late 60s or something. She was not a spring chicken when she was here, but she was still more athletic and capable of doing all of these things than anyone else. But we had a delightful, wonderful time. And the Oregon group came up and shared we went out on a ferry boat. Anyway, we did many wonderful things while she was here, but she was fun. Meheru was so fun, and she was so athletic, and she was, I think she really felt in her element when she was on this tour, because she had always been very much in the limelight, which suited her rather well, with Mehera and Monty and so forth, taking center stage, sharing the stories and so forth. As who was it that mentioned it was Wendy that would mention she was very shy to have to tell stories, but she rose to the occasion when, after the other women Mandali had passed, And and it wasn't her natural element, but she had one of the most incredible memories I've ever seen in anyone. And if any of you heard her tell stories that were from approximately 50 years previously, and she would tell you where, exactly the village or whatever that they were at, and what the house was like and which the rooms were, and all of these details that she remembered off the top of her head. It was really quite amazing to me. But at any rate, I'm sort of rambling with what it was like both at Meherazad and at here in the West to be with Meheru. But yeah, she was an utter delight, and obviously the greatest treasure that she embodied was her love, her focal pointed love for Meher Baba, and her lifetime work, as has been earlier mentioned, as long as Mehera was living, to be there for Mehera, whatever was needed. She was always by her side. That selection of music, she was by Baba's side on the New Life, but always Mehera's as well. And her single pointed every moment of the day consciousness that she had of Baba, whether we're cooking soup in the kitchen or doing something else. We went to a hardware store. It was one of the things she really wanted to do, and she bought a whole bunch of different tools and gifts for the women back at Meherazad and things like that. But always Baba was in the very breath that she breathed, and every action. And I think this can truly be said of all of the women and men Mandali that any of us have met. They just were almost extensions of Baba, because their love had pervaded their very bodies and beings, so that everything was him. Jai Baba. Unless Karen, did you have a question? I saw your hand. She's nodding.
So beautiful.
I have a question.
Before anybody asks anything, I just want to say, Judy, that was so eloquent and beautifully said, straight from the heart. We were so fortunate to have what you call the extensions of Baba, because it gives us the goal. It gives us a sign of where we want to go. It gives us a sense of the goal. Just so beautiful, Judy. Thank you. I'm sorry, who had the question?
You're welcome.
Elizabeth,
Go ahead, Liz.
it's been up for a long time. Anyway, first of all, thank you, all of you who've said something. And I never met Meheru, so I'm really super interested in finding out more about her. And Judy, thank you so much for all those little vignettes. And I would like to know more about her personality. They talked about she was good with flower arranging and using a hammer and nail. And they said she had a good sense of humor. So any stories about that? The other thing that I wanted to ask, though, is You know, Baba must really want us to think about the threshold because it came up a day or two ago. What does Baba mean by crossing the threshold and that you're either in a room or out of a room? And I just think it's amazing that it came up again and that Meheru was a person who would tell people to don't linger in the middle of the threshold. And Judy, I was wondering if you or maybe Karen or somebody else knows what the significance of that is. When Baba originally told that to a wider group of people, I think it's in Lord Meher, but I'm not 100% sure. But I have heard it recently, and this theme is coming up. So I think it must be critical. And for example, in my own life, you know, I was trying to decide, move, not move, where to move, and I could not decide a doggone thing. And finally, I just realized I couldn't decide and just to stay put. And it really came from thinking about, from being quiet for 2 days. But I think that's kind of an one point of the threshold. I mean, it's any decision that you make. And then, well, this is just, but I'd like to know the real story. This is just my interpretation. And that whatever it is, whatever decision is made, knowing that you're first holding on to Baba's Daman and then knowing that it's going to work out. And the consequences may or may not be good, but somehow Baba's got you. And anyway, but I'd love to hear the original story that Baba was saying, if anybody knows it, and more from Judy because of her intimate connection with Meheru, since I didn't get to meet her. So I have to learn about most of the Mandali through other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Now you just gave us purpose. That's why we're here. Because we get the opportunity to have people come and fill in the flesh of these wonderful people that we didn't meet or had limited experience with. We get the whole person, or as much as we can. So I appreciate you, Elizabeth. And I'm going to ask Wendy to go next. I don't know if anybody has, if Wendy knows, or I've heard a different, thing about Baba saying what Baba said. But anyway, Wendy, what do you got?
I'll leave the threshold to somebody else. That's not my expertise by any means. Yeah, that was lovely sharing. Oh my goodness, yes. Judy, I saw Judy many times over in India, and yeah, so thank you, Judy, and Ruthie, thank you, for hosting. So yes, she did like to do carpentry, for sure she did, and Martin and I, we would bring things over when we would come, because we were there usually once or twice every year. And so we would bring things for the school and da. But one of the things that used to come quite regularly were tools for Meheru. Martin would bring her little units, compact things, or if she mentioned something, or flashlights, and she was just so delighted when they came. It was like, okay, and she would just tuck them away so they were safe. It was so cute. Yeah, so that was another recollection, talking about tools. And then in 1999, when I was there, I had an incident that happened, and I was in the oh, what do they call it now? I've forgotten. Oh, Judy. I think it was the isolation ward, if I remember right. But anyway, so Martin and I got permission to go to Meherazad before everybody else because we were leaving. And there was quite a few of the Mandalis still there at that time. And they just didn't want me to get overwhelmed before the trip. Anyway, I was in Mehera and Mommy's room, and I'm standing there and I'm literally taking snapshots in my head, in my eyes, just in case I don't ever get back here, click, 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 click. And I don't know how long I was there. It seemed, quick, but I don't think it really was. But anyway, and then I turned around and Meheru was there. And it was just unbelievable how she knew everything that I was thinking. I mean, it was, I don't know, it just was, I mean, it just, my heart just was like, oh my goodness, thank you, thank you, thank you, and then she gave me a gift that it was, I believe, if I've got it right, I'd have to check my diary, but it was like a necklace kind of thing that I believe came from Australia, from seeds of some sort. And it was where Baba would sit at the dining room table. And she gave me that. She said where it had sat and gave it to me, and was like, whoa, it was, yeah. And she also gave me a couple of very personal things that I think are just for me. And she said, if Baba wants you back, you'll be back, Jai Baba. It's like, Jai Baba, thank you, Meheru. And yeah, it was such a lovely way to leave. I felt so full. And the other Mandali that were still there, Dr. Goher, she had some lovely things, to say. And then when my daughter was getting married, I was there in India prior to. And so they all knew that I was trying to lose weight for the wedding. So, that was kind of cute. And Meheru was always very supportive of that. And before I left, Casey brought me a flower in a little box for my daughter for her wedding. Just a little gift, I was like, wow, that was so amazing. Yeah, so those are just kind of extensions of moments there, and hearing other stories, it pops into your head. Oh yes, and I remember her sewing with not a powered sewing machine, but you had to use your foot to pump the needle. I think most of us.
A treadle machine.
You got it. Thank you. And her stitching was amazing. Like, oh my goodness, it was so even. Yeah, I said, oh, Meheru, like, that's amazing. And, she didn't make a big deal about it. It was just part of her daily things that she did. She was very self-sufficient, right? Wouldn't you say that was Judy? That was, yeah, she was pretty. Anyway, that's a few more memories. Thank you, everyone. I love hearing your stories, Jai Baba.
You made me think about the stitching and how she just went, oh, that's, I was doing a, what do they call them? Those little pictures that you, I can't even, needlepoint, some kind of needlepoint. It was the first time. And I think it was a house and whatever. Anyway, I was just so proud of myself for doing, working on this. It wasn't very good. And I think I mentioned it to Mehera. And she was like, oh, you mean you haven't, that's your first time, you haven't learned how to do this? This is, and it was just so clear that the women there had been schooled in those, important things in India we take for granted in the United States, like learning how to really sew and do a really beautiful job. Mehera had beautiful work that she had done by hand. So it just kind of woke me up in a way that I hadn't been awoken before. Michal, go ahead, sweetheart.
Wow, it's so precious for those people who really spent so much time with so much intimate and close time with the Mandali. You, Judy, wow, what a life. And Wendy, wow, you got, with all being so far away, you still got so much in Meherazad, so many treasured times. So I remembered, oh yeah, one thing with the threshold. I don't think I ever read in Baba's literature about Baba himself saying about the threshold, but it's not the first time that I'm hearing it, because Elizabeth Patterson by Charles Haynes has said the same. So Baba probably have told his close Mandali about the threshold. I don't remember ever reading it in the books, but it might have been something that I read and just slipped my mind. But as Elizabeth Patterson also very much talked about it so specifically, that and Meru so specifically in both cases of Judy and Wendy, that means that Baba was the one who was telling that to the his Mandali. So the thing with the threshold, it has something to do also with tradition in India, which we don't know about, the culture of India, because it has to do with temples and not stepping on the threshold of temples and going in. So it's probably also something cultural that we don't know. But one day, Charles came to Elizabeth's room, and I understand that Elizabeth's office was in her room, and people had to knock on her door and to get permission to go in. And I love Elizabeth, so she has so few stories, and I always want to hear more, because it's like she was so effacing herself that she never went up front, and she always went in the back. And so there's so few stories about it. So when Charles is telling, he's saying in one of these books, and also I heard him on a video, he was knocking on the door and hesitating to go in, because I understand also that the other men that were working with Elizabeth and had good relationships with her, they would knock on the door would be open, they would ask from the outside what they needed to do or for her to give any orders, and they would not go in. So I guess it also had to do with women, men being in the same room together. So, but Charles was so close to her, that was Auntie Boo. And he was like her child rather than anything else. So he was hesitating to come in, and she got, she was very strong with him, like Meru was strong with you. And she said, don't hesitate on the threshold. Either you come in or you stay out. So actually what I feel, and it gives me the shivers, is like Baba is saying, are you coming to me? Then come to me, like the lion in the cage, then come to me all the way. Don't stay outside hesitating. You take the whole step and come to me. So that's how I take this thing with the threshold. Like, yeah, don't hesitate there. Well, if you are there, then just jump into the lion's mouth. And so about Elizabeth, she was asking lives of love. Wait, I'll just take my photo background off. And so it will be shown. Lives of Love by Judith Garbutt, who is the secretary of Bill Page. And she wrote about all the women in Mandali from her visits. So you see also stories of Meru. So one of the stories that I really thought of before coming to this Zoom that really amazes me is the story of the job that Baba gave Meru when he was in seclusion. The time that he was in seclusion, people had to be just quiet in Meherazad. They had to be completely silent, no noise, because he was working so hard and he was already very old. And he was really putting himself under strain, real strong strain. And I think it was also the time that he was not in a good mood, that he was carrying some work that he was doing with maybe with mental health. Maybe he would, and the Mandali were very concerned about him because there was a long time that he seemed very down and didn't react to. They tried to liven up, but nothing helped. So at that time he was doing the seclusion work, and the seclusion work he was doing for all of us. He was calling us. He was preparing the time for us, and among others, and probably for the manifestation of the world or whatever he was doing, we don't know. So at that time, he used to tell Meheru, you are the one to keep everyone silent. Now it's okay, he's telling the mandali, be silent when I'm working. And they would keep silent. They were no children, But Meheru had to keep silent the birds. The birds. So how do you keep silent the birds? The birds were on the trees. How do you tell the bird to be silent, And if they made noise, Baba was angry. So she was making sure that those birds will not make any noise. I don't know how she did that. Of course, Baba probably also helped, but I don't know how you tell birds not to chirp or not to move or not to fly. So there's a story in this book also. I don't want to read it, but there's a story on this book that I just happened to open up because just by chance, because to see if Meheru's stories in this book. So there were farmers close by Meherazad, and Baba had very, very good hearing and very delicate hearing. So if the children would make noise, that would also disturb him. And also, in the meantime, while he was doing all this, the cookers were cooking in Meherazad and with the pots and the pans and everything. And so each one of them was keeping as silent as they could, not putting water in, not making noise with the saucers, not making noise with the top of the pans and all that. But what to do with all the farmers around that the children are playing there, and how do you tell the children to be quiet? And that was her job. She had to go to the farmers and tell the farmers, and if they still disturbed, then she went again. And the mother said, well, I slapped them and I told them not to make any noise, but they did make noise, the children. So she said, but you must try harder. So next time she sent the children away, farther away, so they would not make so much noise next to Baba. How do you make the birds? That is always something that has always, how do you make the birds? I mean, she used to go with a stick also to let them away, but okay, you let them away, but they come back. It's a nest, no. So what impossible things the Mandali did for Baba, and what impossible work Baba did for us. So that's one story that always keeps me wondering how she managed that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, Michal. Thank you for bringing that and the book as well. Elizabeth said she hadn't seen it, so thank you very much for that.
This book can be purchased, the one who in Sharia Press, and so it can be ordered there. And who is the one who republished it is Eric Tepperman, Shelley's ex. So it's very precious.
All right. Betty?
I have a couple of stories. First of all, Threshold. When I went for the first time to Baba's tomb, the Samadhi, of course, Nana gave me a big hug and said, welcome home. And then I stepped in. I stepped right on the threshold and went in and fell apart. I was just weeping and weeping. And so I spent some time in there and came out. And the first thing he said to me is, no, you shouldn't have done that. Don't step on the threshold. So that was my threshold. I mean, I was so gone. I was like, what? But anyway, that was, yeah. So I remembered. I wouldn't do that again. And about Meheru, one funny little, it was wordless and sweet. We were in right in front of the porch, and I was coming to the porch and she was walking the other way. We were going through the flowers, and one of us, I can't remember who, we started walking like this. we were, it was just this funny, very quick moment. I did, and she did, and we just, that was all. It was no words, no, it was just a cute little time with Meru, a joke kind of. And my other Meru stories I've told before, um, uh, we moved into Baba House at Scotts Mills where Meru stayed. The, she was here with the previous owners, Jim and Jean Wilson. They were hosting her, and we came up. And oh, there was one. It was a lovely time. It was kind of spontaneous. We were on the front porch, kind of a bunch of us just hanging, kind of. And then she said, "So, let's hear your Baba stories." So it just turned into this lyric, beautiful time where people were sharing. I mean, she wasn't the kind of person to organize a meeting, but she had a sense of what what would work, and it was just a wonderful. I'll just never forget that time. We all it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And then there's another. I've told these stories before, but I'll tell them. There was out in the back. There was a big hill, and Jim had made a big swing that went way out over the hill and way back, and Jean, so Meru, the athletic Meru, went right up and went on the swing. And Jean said to me later, she said to herself, "Oh my God, I hope she doesn't jump." And she jumped. She jumped off the swing and down the hill and stumbled, and she didn't fall, but people had to catch her. And then later, she said to Meru, "Meru, I was wishing you wouldn't get on wouldn't jump." And she said, "That was Meru said, gee, that was Baba talking to you. Why didn't you say something?" So that was one time here. Oh, another. Jim is a contractor, and she saw a post hole digger, tools, back to tools. Well, she had the brain of a mechanical engineer. She just was so fascinated with how things worked, and so she really liked that post. It's two shovels put together with some handles, and you dig holes for fences. She really liked this post hole digger. So he then went to India to work on, in the summertime, to work on the tomb, the dome of the tomb. Just a few people went at that time. And so he brought just the head of a post hole, not the handles and everything, but just the two shovels, and for her. So he brought the post hole digger, and he had it in his room. And he said he woke up in the middle of the night to see what he thought was a crate, I don't know, a snake in his room at the PC. So he took that post hole digger and threw it and killed the snake with the post hole digger. So that was that story. Oh yeah, there's another. We live in a beautiful valley with an abbey nearby. Mount Angel, it's called. A beautiful Benedictine abbey. So, and Meru wanted to go to Vespers at this evening kind of service. So at the Catholic Church. So 4 or 5 of us loaded into cars and drove over to the Abbey, and we all went to Vespers. And it was a beautiful place. It was nice, and we came out, and somebody said, "So what did you think, Meredith?" She said, "Well, it was a little dry." I mean, she who had been with the Avatar anyway, that was her comment. I think that's all that I remember. Yeah. So, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. I love the story of walking.
It was
And that
a
instant
great moment.
connection.
Unforgettable moment. I loved it.
Jai Baba, Betty. Thank you for remembering Meheru with us. And Judy, I've been in your home. I've been to your house, and you have a beautiful, it's small and it just embraces you. So I can understand Meheru being comfortable and happy in your home.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I am Um, yeah, actually, almost everybody that ever comes for the first time to my front door and actually comes in says it's so cozy. And I think it was Jim Frasino that said, Judy, it reminds me of the center of the lagoon cabin. And because there's a lot of raw, wood that hasn't been painted over, that's been built there. A previous owner was a really wonderful woodworker that by profession. And so anyway, it's quaint and cozy and has had Baba's blessings through Meheru. Of course, there are many people with much grander homes where Bauji and every Mandali that came through stayed in. But anyway, so I have a couple of responses to folks, what they've said, and then one story I thought I'd leave you with. Birds, yes, the birds that Meheru was trying to keep quiet to not disturb Baba's seclusion work were large crows that had very, not sweet little sparrows that had lovely songs. And you're right, she was out there daily, many times a day, all day, and into the night at times with her long pole. But she also threw small, pebbles and things at them to keep them literally away. So it wasn't to keep, I mean, when they were there, they would caw. So them not being on the roof was what she was aiming at. And I bet quite successful, even though she felt, but it was a real strain for her. She often spoke about the difficulty of keeping the birds quiet. And Elizabeth asked about threshold. I never heard what you're referring to as the original story from Baba. Really what I heard was what I shared earlier, that Meheru said, Baba said, be on one side or the other, don't straddle it. But a couple of comments about the threshold. And for me, when I think of threshold, as I've shared before, I had the great good fortune practically every day that I was living at Meherabad to do samadhi duty at Baba's samadhi. And the threshold, as you all know, is very precious. So many people would bow down and even kiss the threshold before walking into the samadhi. And it's so much higher than your typical threshold of any other door I've ever seen, which is wonderful because it's so significant. And what's more significant than going from the world outside to the resting place, as Erich would say, the body that housed reality. The body that housed reality was how Erich always spoke of Baba's body in the samadhi. And so yes, the threshold is very, very incredible. And I don't know how many people know. I didn't know right at the beginning. It was later that someone pointed out to me. But next time you're blessed to get to Meherabad, look carefully at the threshold of Baba's Samadhi, and you will see very clearly Baba circa 1932 with long hair, and beautifully in the natural wood of the Samadhi is his picture. So that's a great threshold to focus on.
Thanks for mentioning that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's beautiful. And if you haven't, once you see it, you'll never not see it. But I looked at it for a long time without noticing in the beginning. And maybe Elizabeth, this is for you or anyone else that, you wanted more stories about Meheru. And one of the wonderful things that Meheru did back in the 90s, when the days were longer, we would have lunch at Meherazad. Now in later years, as the Mandali got older, the days became shorter and you would get transported back at 12:30. But so when the days were longer, I think about 3 o'clock at that time, some days Meheru would decide that she wanted to go on a walk, and she would invite anyone that wanted to come, anyone that was there as a pilgrim or a resident if we were free. And so I had a chance many times to go on walks with Meheru. And as Betty demonstrated with, I think was just a moment, Meheru would always take a walking stick, and she would walk like a hiker in the Alps. And she was so much faster than I could walk naturally at my pace. And sometimes there'd be maybe an average of 10 people or something that would go on the walk on any given day. She would invite people. She'd say, well, I'm going to go on a walk, and yeah, I think we came at invitation of Meheru. And we would walk out to the reservoir most often. There's a large reservoir very near Meherazad that's the water supply for the whole area. And then there's a narrow causeway, you can walk along where, the water's right there, you don't want to fall off, but, and we would walk the whole, I don't know if causeway, anyway, the path, on the top of the reservoir, and then to the other side. And there was a farming family that had long time connections with Meher Baba when he was in the body, and they'd been maintained into those current days in the 90s. And we would go there most often, sometimes other places, but when we went there, they allowed us to pick things, and Meheru would instruct us to, pick. I don't remember in Marathi the name of the greens, but there were some very delicious deep green. What can I liken them to? That they had roundish heads. And long green stems and so forth. Anyway, we would pick different things, and they were a little bit like arugula, like a sharp kind of taste. But they were something that you fried up. So we gather actually quite a bit of those and carry them back to Meherazad. And then she would instruct whoever was cooking, maybe it was Katie, in the kitchen, to cook them for all of us. And whoever went on the walk, usually everybody else was eating lunch by the time we would get back. But we would, Meheru would instruct us to, come back to the women's side, to Baba's house. And in a few minutes, the freshly fried greens, I don't know, anyway, they've been cooked in, stir-fried greens would be brought out, and maybe some of you have tasted them. Anyway, we would have that for the appetizer for our lunch that day, if you were fortunate enough to be there on a day and get invited to go for a walk with Meheru. I love that quality of, she was just herself and she wanted to go for a walk and, come along. And I remember one in a similar way, it was Baba's birthday. I don't remember which year. Well, there more than one year, but and for Baba's birthday, everybody's up at 4, maybe earlier than 4 in the morning, but down at the Samadhi before 5, because there's a long line for darshan on Baba's birthday, and then a lot of singing afterwards and so forth. And at any rate, I remember Meheru. No, it's not Baba's birthday. It's Amar Tithi. It was Amar Tithi, because Meheru would spend the night in the East Room, as would the other women Mandali in earlier years when they were there living. And anyway, Meheru invited me, into what we used to call Mansari's kitchen. It was really the ashram kitchen. And Mansari had passed at that point. Anyway, she invited me to come have breakfast with her and and Janet and Heather and the folks that I wasn't one of the usuals for that. So it was a special opportunity for me to get, and I remember she handed me a hard-boiled egg that she brought from Meherazad and so forth. So they'd done prep before coming for Amar Tithi. But Meheru was very, had that quality of gathering in many people to give them a special moment that they might not have had. I've talked before about Bal Natu having that same beautiful quality of kind of noticing, especially who wasn't being included and including them. And she had that lovely quality. So yes, we could go on endlessly. The Baba, his lovers, and his stories are endless, but I'll leave it at that for today. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Judy. Beautiful. Yeah, the thing I had heard was Baba said, don't stand in the doorway, either come in or go out. So that was wherever that came from. But I think what we can do is end, if it's all right, we'll end with Karen Talbot. Good. As we started with Karen. Jai Baba.
I just want to share a few things. I think I was very fortunate to have a gardening connection with Meheru. And when I would be at Meherazad, she would give me the opportunity to putter. And we'd walk around the garden together. And she was a fantastic gardener. I would bring seeds. She grew beautiful flowers and lettuces for the Mandali and the women living at Meherazad. They would eat these lettuces, and they were so sweet, in their salads for lunch. I had the opportunity of sending lettuce and other seeds to Meheru and then later to Casey for planting in their raised beds, which were always fascinated me because we don't really see brick raised beds in this country. I think that was something that she got from Mehera, because Meryl would always give us tours of the garden. So it was lovely when Meheru would do the same. Yeah, so I just want to thank everybody for sharing what they shared, and that I really enjoyed being here. Jai Baba to all.
Jai Baba, thank you for bringing the garden.
I just want to say something about what Judy said about the green thing that they picked up.
Yeah.
I think it is fenugreek.
Hold on, let me spotlight that.
It's a
Yes, Meti.
It's a food, meti, right? It's a food that Indians eat a lot, and I loved it there. Wow! And you do just stir it in the pan and eat it. Well, here in Israel, the Yemenites grind this seed and make some kind of food out of it for soups and to eat with pita, and it's very good. It's very cleaning of the body and the blood, and it keeps the person very healthy. So I think that is what you picked up.
Yeah, Meti, yeah, it's Meti, and it's considered like very, very nutritious. Lots of.
It's very healthy also because it cleans the blood and cleans it if you have any kind of sickness, and it keeps the body very healthy.
Thank you, Michal. You're right on the money, Michal. Thank you so much. Well, I think it'd be wonderful to have a moment of silence right now. Jai Baba. Jai Baba. If you'd like to unmute, we can all say our key J's together. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Hey,
Hey Baba.
thank you all for shares. Thank you, Lucy, for this beautiful space holding, and for the video, and Karen for the beautiful bios, and wow, and what beautiful stories.
Yeah.
Because my
Wendy and Judy, so lucky. Wow. And Betty for also